The amber liquid swirls in the glass I'm polishing, catching the warm glow of the bar lights as I prepare for another shift, and I can't help but reflect on the irony that the very skills that make me good at my job, my warmth, my approachability, my ability to make people feel seen and valued, are the same qualities that have become a source of tension in my relationship, creating a rift between my boyfriend and me that seems to widen with each passing week as we cycle through the same arguments. With the exhausting predictability of a record stuck on a scratch, and I find myself questioning whether the man I love will ever truly accept the career that has given me independence, purpose, and financial stability in a world where those things can be so difficult for a young woman to attain. I have been bartending for several years now, long before my boyfriend came into the picture, and I have built a life around this profession that has been both challenging and rewarding, teaching me resilience in the face of difficult customers, patience when the pressure is high and the drinks keep coming, and the art of balancing friendliness with professional boundaries in environments where those lines can sometimes blur. The money, I must admit, is genuinely good, allowing me to support myself without relying on anyone else, to pay my bills on time, to save for the future, and to enjoy the occasional luxury that makes life feel full and vibrant, and the social aspect of the job has been a lifeline during periods when my personal life felt isolated or disconnected, providing a built-in community of co-workers and regulars who have become like family in ways that I never expected when I first started pouring drinks behind the bar. I genuinely enjoy the energy of a busy night, the rhythm of mixing drinks and serving customers, the satisfaction of creating something that brings people pleasure, and the sense of competence and mastery that comes from doing a job well, and I have never felt ashamed of my profession or believed that it diminished my worth as a person or as a partner. My boyfriend, however, sees things very differently, and his perspective has become a source of increasing conflict in our relationship, escalating from occasional comments to full-blown arguments that leave me feeling defensive, misunderstood, and profoundly frustrated by his inability to see my job through anything other than the lens of his own discomfort. His objections are numerous and, in his mind, entirely reasonable, ranging from concerns about my safety working late nights to his discomfort with the drunken behavior of patrons to his specific fixation on the attention I receive from male customers who flirt with me while I am simply trying to do my job and earn my living. He has framed these concerns as being about respect, suggesting that my choice to remain in this profession somehow reflects a lack of respect for myself or for our relationship, and this framing has been particularly hurtful because it implies that my job is inherently degrading or inappropriate, that I am somehow compromising my integrity or my commitment to him simply by showing up to work and being friendly to the people who sit at my bar. I have tried, countless times, to explain that I cannot control the behavior of others, that the flirting and attention I receive are an unfortunate byproduct of the hospitality industry rather than something I invite or encourage, and that being friendly is literally part of my job description, the very thing that makes customers return and tips increase and the business thrive, and I have emphasized that my friendliness is professional, not personal, a performance of warmth that I am paid to provide rather than an invitation to anything more. I have never given him a reason to doubt my fidelity or my commitment to our relationship, and I have been transparent about my interactions with customers and co-workers, sharing details of my nights in the hope that openness would alleviate his concerns and build the trust that seems so elusive in this particular area of our lives together. The underlying assumption that seems to drive his objections is that my work environment is inherently sexualized or that my presence in that environment automatically means something inappropriate is going to happen, and this assumption has been deeply frustrating because it reduces my professional identity to a caricature, ignoring my agency, my professionalism, and my clear and consistent boundaries with customers and co-workers alike. I have tried to explain that I have developed a thick skin and a set of strategies for dealing with unwanted attention, that I know how to shut down flotation professionally and firmly, that I have the support of management and security when customers cross lines, and that I am not some naive innocent who is being taken advantage of by the environment but a competent professional who has chosen this career and knows how to navigate its challenges. The implication that I am somehow being disrespectful to our relationship by continuing to work in this environment feels like a profound misunderstanding of who I am and what I value, reducing my complex professional identity to a simplistic narrative that serves his insecurities rather than acknowledging the reality of my experience and my choices. I have asked him whether he would have the same objections if I were a female surgeon who worked late nights in an emergency room surrounded by male colleagues, or a female lawyer who had to work late with male partners on cases, or a female executive who traveled frequently and entertained clients in social settings. And his inability to answer this question without admitting that his concerns are specific to the nature of my profession rather than the circumstances of my work has been telling, revealing a judgment about bartending that he seems unable or unwilling to examine or challenge. The deeper question I have been grappling with, the one that keeps me awake at night long after my shifts have ended and the adrenaline has faded, is whether his objections represent a reasonable boundary that I should respect or an unreasonable demand rooted in insecurity that I should resist, and I have found myself swinging between these interpretations depending on the day and the nature of our most recent argument. On the one hand, I understand that everyone has boundaries in relationships, that it is reasonable for a partner to express discomfort with situations that feel threatening or disrespectful to the relationship, and that compromise is an essential part of any healthy partnership, and I have wondered whether I am being too rigid or too defensive by refusing to consider alternative career paths that might alleviate his concerns. On the other hand, I have begun to recognize the patterns in his objections that suggest this is less about reasonable boundaries and more about control, about his need to feel secure in ways that require me to change fundamental aspects of my life rather than requiring him to work through his own insecurities and trust issues. The fact that he does not seem to trust me, despite my consistent faithfulness and transparency, is a red flag that I cannot ignore, and I have started to wonder whether any job would be acceptable to him, or whether he would simply find new reasons to object if I left bartending for something more traditionally respectable. The conversations we have had about this have been circular and exhausting, with me repeating my defenses and him repeating his objections, neither of us feeling heard or validated, and I have begun to feel a creeping resentment that our relationship has become defined by this conflict rather than by the connection and joy that brought us together in the first place. I have sought advice from friends and colleagues who have been in similar situations, and the range of perspectives I have encountered has been both enlightening and confusing, with some telling me that I should prioritize my boyfriend's feelings and look for another job, arguing that no career is worth damaging a relationship, and others insisting that I should stand my ground, warning that giving in to this kind of pressure sets a dangerous precedent that will only lead to more demands for me to change who I am and what I do. I have listened to stories from women who left jobs they loved to appease insecure partners, only to find that their sacrifices were never enough, that their partners simply moved on to other objections, other attempts to control and constrain, and I have heard from women who tried to compromise by finding jobs that they thought would satisfy their partners, only to find themselves miserable and resentful, regretting the loss of the independence and fulfillment that their original careers had provided. I have also heard from people who successfully navigated similar challenges, whose partners ultimately came to accept their professions after open communication and mutual understanding. And these stories have given me hope that there is a path forward that does not require me to abandon either my relationship or my career. The common thread in all of these stories, however, has been the importance of the partner's willingness to work on their own insecurities rather than simply demanding that their partner change, and this has been the missing piece in my own situation, the thing that makes me wonder whether we can truly resolve this conflict in a way that feels fair and sustainable for both of us. The stakes of this decision feel enormous, as if I am being asked to choose between two essential parts of my identity, my career and my relationship, and I have found myself frozen by the weight of this choice, unable to commit either to leaving my job or to fully accepting the strain it places on my partnership. I love my boyfriend, and I believe he loves me, and I know that his concerns about my safety and his discomfort with my work environment are not entirely without merit, as the hospitality industry can be dangerous for women, and the culture of excessive drinking that pervades it can be toxic and disorienting in ways that are hard to explain to someone who has never experienced it from the inside. I have been groped by customers, propositioned by men old enough to be my father, yelled at by drunks who thought I was their servant, and treated as if my body was part of the transaction rather than my service, and I have developed the coping mechanisms and boundaries that allow me to survive and thrive in this environment, but I cannot pretend that it is always safe or that I am never affected by the treatment I receive. My boyfriend's concerns about my safety are valid, and I appreciate that he cares about me enough to worry, but I have begun to wonder whether his framing of these concerns is less about my safety and more about his own feelings of inadequacy and insecurity, the sense that he is somehow failing to protect me or that other men are intruding on what he sees as his territory. The possessive undertones of his objections, the way he frames my job as a threat to his status or his sense of manhood, have been increasingly difficult to ignore, and I have started to recognize patterns of behavior that worry me, not because I think he is abusive or malicious, but because I fear he is unable to separate his own feelings from my autonomy and my right to make my own choices about my career. The conversations we have had about this have often devolved into accusations and defensiveness, with me feeling like I am constantly justifying my choices and him feeling like I am dismissing his feelings, and I have begun to wonder whether we need professional help to navigate this conflict, whether a therapist or counselor could help us communicate more effectively and find common ground that we cannot seem to reach on our own. The difficulty of these conversations has been compounded by the fact that we come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives on work and gender roles, with his upbringing emphasizing traditional roles and expectations that clash with my more independent, career-oriented approach to life, and these differences have become more pronounced as we argue about my job. I have tried to be empathetic to his perspective, to understand why my job makes him uncomfortable, and to acknowledge the validity of his feelings without accepting the conclusion that I should change my career to accommodate them. But this middle ground has been difficult to maintain when we are both feeling hurt and defensive and convinced that the other person simply does not understand or care about our perspective. The emotional labor of these conversations has been exhausting, draining me of energy that I would rather invest in my relationship, my work, or my own well-being, and I have started to feel like I'm walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring my words and behavior to avoid triggering another argument about my job. The broader context of our relationship has also influenced how I view this conflict, and I have found myself examining other areas where his insecurities have surfaced. wondering whether this is an isolated issue or part of a pattern that I have been reluctant to acknowledge. I have noticed that he is uncomfortable when I spend time with male friends, that he asks probing questions about my day in ways that feel more like interrogation than genuine interest, that he seems threatened by my independence and my ability to support myself without his help. These behaviors have been subtle, easily dismissed when taken individually, but when viewed together with his objections to my job, they create a picture that concerns me, suggesting that his insecurity is deeper and more pervasive than I initially recognized. I have asked myself whether I am being too harsh, whether I am pathologizing normal relationship behaviors and projecting my own fears onto his actions, and I have tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, to trust that his intentions are good even when his behavior is frustrating. But the cumulative effect of these interactions has been a gradual erosion of my sense of security in the relationship, a growing feeling that I am constantly being evaluated and judged, that my choices are never quite good enough for him, that I am always just one wrong decision away from disappointing him or making him feel insecure. The support I have received from my co-workers has been invaluable during this period, providing a sense of solidarity and validation that has helped me maintain my confidence in my professional identity and my choices. My colleagues understand the nuances of our work in ways that my boyfriend cannot, and they have shared their own stories of navigating similar conflicts with partners who did not understand or accept their careers. Some of them have had partners who ultimately came around, who learned to trust and accept the nature of their work, and others have had relationships that ended because of these conflicts, and hearing these stories has helped me feel less alone in my struggles and given me perspective on the range of possible outcomes. The sense of community I have found at work has been a reminder of why I love what I do, of the connections I have built and the relationships I have formed that extend far beyond the transactional nature of customer service, and this has made it harder to imagine leaving my job simply to appease someone who does not seem to respect or value that aspect of my life. The question of whether my boyfriend can ever truly accept my career remains open, and I find myself caught between hope and realism, wanting to believe that we can work through this and build a relationship where I am free to pursue my career without constant conflict, while also recognizing that some differences may be too fundamental to bridge, that we may simply be incompatible in ways that no amount of communication can resolve. The future of our relationship hangs in the balance, and I am acutely aware that the decisions I make in the coming weeks and months will have lasting consequences for both of us. I have considered looking for other jobs, not because I want to leave bartending, but because I want to see if there are compromises that could work for both of us, jobs that would allow me to maintain my independence and financial stability while addressing his concerns about my safety and the nature of my work. I have explored options in related fields, like beverage management or event planning, that would utilize my skills and experience while offering more regular hours and a less intense environment, and I have found myself surprisingly conflicted about the prospect of leaving the bar that has been my professional home for years. The friendships I have formed with my colleagues and regulars, the rhythm of the work that has become second nature, the sense of identity and purpose that my job provides, all of these factors make the thought of leaving feel like a significant loss, a sacrifice that I am not sure I am willing to make, even for someone I love deeply. The question I keep returning to, the one that I suspect will ultimately determine my decision, is whether my boyfriend's love for me can extend to accepting the career I have chosen, whether he can trust me enough to let me be who I am without demanding that I change to soothe his insecurities, and whether our relationship can survive the honest answer to that question, whatever it may be.